Hi, and welcome back to the second to last week in this course on clarity. I call it the course on clarity because for me, that is what acceptance commitment therapy and really the philosophical framework that it's rooted in brings for me. I think that it helps enhance clarity on life, both inner world and outer world. I find that for myself, I find it with clients. So it's taking a look at the philosophy of this modality and weaving in other somatic bits as well as conscious little nuggets in these 6, 7 weeks. So here is our overview that we revisit every week. The goal of ACT is to increase our sense of psychological flexibility. Last week, we worked on diffusion, so making space, kind of putting an arm's length distance between you and your thoughts. Here, we're going to dive even deeper on that into what I think is the juiciest bit, self as context. So, this is definitely the most esoteric week of them all. Heads up, but that is my jam, my favorite thing. So, what is self as context? The work here is to come to understand the you, the version of you that bears witness to you. So, witness to all of your different parts of self. You're going to have to hear this a million times if it's your first time hearing it for it to even begin to make sense, but that's okay. We're just planting a seed here. So, the essence of this is surprise, you are not your thoughts. That's what we were speaking about last week. Because if you can put an arm's length distance between you and your thought, if you can notice the thought, it tells us that you are not actually the thought, which sounds obvious. You know that you're not a thought, but the way that we act, getting all wrapped up in our thoughts, we seem to forget that. So you're not your thoughts. You're also not your feelings. You are not your identity. You are not your material possessions. Again, all things that I know, you know. However, when we go about our days, our lives, we get confused. We act as though we are these things a lot of the time, and that causes us distress, really, at the end of the day. So you're none of those things. You're also not a compilation of all of your life experiences. Even if you had had a completely different life than you've had, you would still be you. So, begin to think about that a little bit. So, all that being said, what are we talking about? What is this you that we're discussing? That is the witness. You're also called your observing self or your witness mind. Again, it's the you that witnesses you. And what are some qualities of the witness? The witness is quiet, steady, and always present. I'm going to include a meditation separate from this recording in this week's lesson because it would be too long if we put it all together, I think. And in that meditation, we're really going to work on getting in touch with this witness. I wish it had been explained to me the first time I heard this concept like that. But again, I think really this is one of those things you might need to hear a million times before it begins to make sense. But we're going to get in touch with that you that despite all of your different phases of life has always been there. If you really tune in, we all know this on an intuitive level. There is the us that's been watching us. My age changes, my relationships change, my jobs change, my roles, but there's still a me at the essence of that. And that is important to get in touch with. We're going to, let's talk about why. Why? So when I'm just me, I'm in this role. Right now, I'm a 33-year-old woman. I'm a therapist. I am getting married this year, right? These are all bits of identity that are not constant in my life. So if I'm just tapped into that, that's a tight definition of self, and it's not that it doesn't have value, but as soon as those things begin to change, then I'm unstable if I have nothing else. I have to be able to make space, understand that, one, we evolve and flow over time. Um, but even with those evolutions of character, there is something bigger, more consistent there, more simple. So, more space, less struggle. Also, the freedom to choose. So, if I'm not just my current identity, if I'm not just my current thoughts or my current emotions, I remember that okay, I'm opening up. And that is the psychological flexibility that we're aiming for here, right? Of remembering that I can choose how I'm behaving, how I'm thinking, what I see as different possibilities for me in my life. This takes us back to our values that we talked about week two of this, the first principle that we introduced. What actually matters to me, because everything can't matter to me, but what actually matters to me, so I can narrow that down and chase after it. Also, why this matters, this is what I'm saying, this is the esoteric piece of this. It gives us a deeper connection to ourselves, to life. Understanding this concept again, revisiting it, and deepening your understanding helps you feel that deeper, consistent sense of self. But it also, I think, cracks us open a little bit to curiosity. And well, if there's that open, consistent self, where does that come from? What else is that connected to? I think it demands self inquiry from us. But we'll get a little bit more into that. Right now, some easy tips of how to practice. Again, this is very deep, but it's actually also not that hard to get in touch with. So, little subtle shifts that I think are very helpful for this are going from, I love this and I say it all the time, but not identifying, especially with our mental health symptoms or diagnoses or issues. So, changing from I'm anxious, I'm noticing anxiety. Completely different story. This is a big one. I'm a bulimic. Um, I know that's controversial in like the addiction space, but I'll use eating disorders because it's less controversial there. So instead of saying I am abulimic, I'm recovering from bulimia. Completely different paradigm of how I'm identifying, how I'm operating as a result. Even something simple. I really do. I mean, I say it because I've been like I've grown up in this world. When I get a cold, it's easy to say the words I'm sick, but I try to catch myself. I'm feeling unwell. I'm feeling under the weather. These things, our words are so powerful. I think so much more powerful than any of us understand. But even so, it opens us up to a different realm of possibility. Seems like it doesn't matter, but at the end of the day, it really does. So that's one quick practice tip of again toggling between identity self and observer self. Also, practicing non judgmental awareness. So, this is the basics of mental presence, contact with the present moment that we talked about again several weeks ago. So, just returning to basic awareness. Where is my breath? What am I feeling in my body? How's my heart? Where are my thoughts? Where is my mind traveling to? Is it in the past? Is it in the future? And more so than changing that, like yes, we develop this awareness to become more present, but also avoiding fixing that. There's a lot of power in just noticing it and just naming um, things, even naming dynamics or struggles that we're having and going through, um, without jumping to fix it or make it wrong or right. So that's my tip number two. And number three is using imagery. So we talked about this, and last week, the guided imagery was about noticing your thoughts as leaves going down a flowing stream. We'll just add some other imagery. If I'm the sky, my thoughts are clouds passing by. If I'm the ocean, my thoughts are waves rolling in, or my experiences are waves rolling in. Or, I'm this vast open road and the cars driving by are my thoughts, are my feelings, or my experiences. So I think that can be very helpful as well as eye opening for people when they start to come back to that imagery. And, this is all practice, so it means repetition. If you feel like it doesn't click the first time, you're probably normal. It doesn't click for anybody the first time. Or, if it does, like, great for you. But yeah, kind of like I was saying, this isn't about escapism. This isn't about zoning out of my problems, or this isn't a spiritual bypass. This isn't disconnecting from my feelings or even my discomfort. But this is sort of, I say kind of like changing like the point of view of like we have this first person point of view, where we're operating. And again, that's the identity, that's the role that I'm in right now. Those are the thoughts, the feelings I'm having. But also, there's like this zoom out feature, so I can get into third person. Um, and again, this isn't an escape and this isn't a dissociation. That's not the same thing. This is just remembering I can be here experiencing, and then I can pull all the way back and watch myself experience. And when I do that, again, there's space, there's connection to self. I have choice. I'm not locked in here. Um, it's not to live in either one all the time. It's just to remember that we have, the control and to, practice more using that dial, experiencing our deeper sense of self and our, first person main character self. Um, I'm including some resources here because maybe that would be my fourth tip of diving deeper. This is a very esoteric, a very spiritual concept, I think. So here are the books and tools that I've used to enhance my understanding of this concept, because I know that I heard this many times when I was a bit younger, but it really, I'm not kidding you, a million times of repetition before the concept even started to land for me. So The Untethered Soul, a lot of people love that book, like 101. I could not read that book 101. It was like, it was gibberish to me. That book made a lot of sense to me later on. And I think that many books are like that. Like they just hit us at a certain um, time and place. And, sometimes they make sense one year and not another year. So I don't know. I'm putting these all here for you to try to see if anything jumps out at you. The Surrender Experiment, same author, Michael Singer. The Surrender Experiment is the author's story. The Untethered Soul is the philosophy he's sharing. Um, Letting Go by David R. Hawkins. Amazing, amazing book. I am that very thick, dense read, but it's the kind of book you can open to a page and, um, there are short snippets. You can get so much out of the 1 or 2 pages that each little chapter is. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That's another one. Was gibberish to me the first time I opened it. I opened it a year later and I couldn't put it down. Most recently, the practice of Kabbalah, which is it's really Jewish mysticism, but presented in a non-secular way. At least that's how I'm experiencing it. Um, Very good. I think very practical, um, and like I don't know, like tangible resource and how to of tapping into some of these kind of deeper and broader concepts that are being presented here. So this is a little overview of Self of Context Plus. I would recommend setting some time aside for the recording that I'm also going to include linked in this Substack. So stay tuned and thank you for listening.